Arnold, a handsome but stuck-up prince, walks into an already bloodied battle scene and easily takes out attacking soldiers with a swing of his sword. He calmly makes his way into the castle, with his sword dripping with the blood of his opponents. Inside, 4 knights shake in their boots like fishes out of water as they await their incoming enemy, the Emperor of Galkine, Arnold Hine. He soon arrives, and the thunder claps to announce his presence. The 4 knights finally gather courage to attack, and he dodges the first 2 attacks before killing off both knights. He then breaks off the sword of the third, but before he can kill her, her colleague sacrifices himself. That's just stupid. Anyway, she then attacks with her broken sword. She bears the full brunt of his sword, though, and deceives herself that she lived her life to the fullest. She does bear a little regret, so she promises to do things differently if she has another chance. Funny enough, the universe decided to give it to her. Rishi Irmgard Weitzner reawakens to see the prince breaking up with her sorry ass. She doesn't feel the least bit worried about it, though. She just walks away from him, seeing as it's the 7th time she has lived her life. You see, things were much more different in her first life.
Flashback.
She was actually surprised when Prince Dietrich told her that she belongs to the streets. Worse off, he reads her list of crimes and kicks her out of town. Her parents didn't bother confirming if her crimes were real before expressing their utmost disappointment, just like Asian parents when you don't grow to become a doctor. Rishi roamed the streets until she ran into some traveling merchants who offered to help her reach the next country out of pity, or lust. Anyway, the boss has a thing for pretty girls, and Rish is just that. She notices the way he talks about her outfit being made by royalty and immediately offers to sell her ring. A girl's gotta eat. As they gallop away, the merchant presents her with an opportunity to work with them, seeing as she's jobless and never knew another life. She gets so excited by the offer that she begs them to teach her how to become a merchant. Chief Tully taught her everything she needed to know, so she branched out on her own, visiting all but one country in the world. As she was about to visit it, karma brought a war that ended up taking her life. Soon, time was rewound, and she appeared before Prince Dietrich once again. She had to pinch herself to ensure she wasn't dreaming, and immediately she confirmed this. She walked out on the poor prince. Rishi stopped by her house to gather her personal effects, but by the time she reached the road where Chief Tully had found her, it had been too late. Instead of getting down, she decided to sell her belongings and use the proceeds to cross the sea. She learnt medicine and how to apply herbs, and later traveled to a kingdom in the north. There, she saved some sickly prince named Kyle. Who names their child Kyle?
Huh?
As rewarding as Rish's second life was, she also got swept up in the war and got herself killed. Upon her third reawakening, she didn't even give the prince a chance to finish his sentence before packing her things and heading out to meet Dr. Michelle Heaven. Dude is blonde and has a girl's name, probably gives jobs for money. She happily learnt all she could from him and parted ways soon enough. Unfortunately, she gets killed in the war yet again.
No! God, please, no! No!
In her fourth life, she was a handmaiden. In her sixth, she disguised herself as a man and became a knight. The sad part is that in each life, she unfailingly died every 5 years. In this, her seventh life, Risha decides to take it easy and promises to live a long life. Since she has always been taking the front entrance on her way out, she decides to take the side this time. Immediately, she turns the corner. She bumps into Arnold Hine. Her shock leaks out and she screams his name. This surprises him because it was his first time in her country. She apologizes and tells him about her broken engagement, using it as an excuse to exit the conversation. Believe women at your own risk.
Women.
She then takes off her shoes and jumps down the balcony. For some reason, this turns on Arnold, so he tells Oliver, his manservant, to prepare his horse. Rishi runs into Prince Dietrich by the gate and immediately regrets it. He tries to imply that she's broken about the engagement, but our girl makes it abundantly clear that he did her a favor. This makes even the guards laugh at the poor prince. A simp named Lady Marie comes to the prince's defense, though, and it turns out that she lied against our girl. Anyway, Rish reiterates that she doesn't need the prince in her life for it to have meaning. The drama queen then falls to the ground, where Marie runs to his side. Rish makes sure to advise Marie to choose personal happiness over that of her family. After that, she begins to leave. Suddenly, someone grabs her shoulder and instincts from her time as a knight kick in. She pulls a sword and attacks the person, only to find that Mr. Killjoy was just testing her. He's quite impressed with her skill, and in turn, she announces his identity to everyone else, and they immediately fill with dread. She remembers that he's the one who caused all the wars that took her life, and is even the one who killed her in her 6th life. This same man gets on his knees in front of everyone and asks Rish to be his wife. There's no way she'll say yes, right? If you know what anime this is, make sure to leave a comment and subscribe. Also, make sure to join the community Discord if you like anime and want to stay updated with the channel. Rishes turns his model ass down. You heard right. She freaking took back her hand and was like, "Prince, take your proposal and shove it." Anyway, Arnold just laughs it off, and the king arrives soon enough. He buries Dietrich's head into the soil as he takes a knee. They both then apologize to Prince Arnold for their rudeness. He's not mad at all. He tells the king that he only wants a chance to talk more with Lady Rish. The king then begs our girl to hear him out. In privacy, Arnold admits that he has fallen completely in love with her. He does it with finesse, though. If he was a musician, dude would be Drake.
Anita Max win.
Anyway, she keeps thinking about how he ended up instigating wars in all her lifetimes and wonders if she can know the reason by getting close to him. She agrees to the marriage on 4 conditions. Firstly, she wants everything used in the wedding ceremony to be procured from a company of her choosing. She also wants a space to receive guests from other countries and to live separately from Lord Arnold. Last but not least, she wants a chance to laze around for the rest of her days. Weirdly, Mr. Killjoy is love-struck enough to agree to her outrageous demands. Rish gets a sweet deal and moves out of town soon enough. She stops their journey to pick some herbs and later on almost cuts off Arnold's fingers when he tries to touch her. Well, tries to retrieve his sword. She had slept on the sword that killed her father. And while she mulls it over, Arnold commends her for sensing him. He then updates her about the Aria Trading Company being contacted, and Riche is happy that she'll get to communicate with them in this life too. Rish catches herself staring at Arnold's good looks when news of an enemy attack comes. Arnold locks her in the carriage, but she easily picks the lock. She meets all the enemies defeated when she comes out, but realizes that Arnold didn't kill any of them. Okay, maybe there's a sliver of hope for him. One of his men got poisoned, so Rishi examines the poison while Arnold plans to return to a settlement for treatment. Our girl then announces that she can make an antidote. She does this soon enough, but notices the doubt on all of the soldiers' faces. She's crazy enough to infect herself and then cure it to prove her point. They finally submit to her treatment because, let's face it, no one wants to be paralyzed. Can't kick butt if your feet can't move. Later on, Arnold sits beside Rish on an open field nearby. He continues to gaze at her until she asks what his problem is. He admits that she amuses him, and all his attempts to know how she pulled off everything fails woefully. He then breaks into a story about each of the knights that got injured and ends up taking a knee as he thanks Rish for saving them. She becomes confused, seeing as she didn't expect that from the same emperor that brought about the death of hundreds. Afterwards, she asks why his knights were wary of her, and it turns out that they see her as a villainess, so they had concocted various notions about her. It also turns out that Arnold stole Riche from the king of her hometown, making her his hostage. Normal people would be scared, or maybe feel bad, but not Rish. Our girl gets giddy because she realizes she can laze around since she's a hostage. They arrive at Galkine, and it amazes Riche. It was the only country she never got to visit in all her lifetimes. Upon reaching the palace, Arnold announces that the imperial villa isn't ready. She insists on staying there and proudly says it's because she's a hostage. Yeah, they throw the word around like it's a domestic violence victim. She gets to the villa and activates maid mode. She ties up her hair, gets mops and brushes, and turns down help from her guards. Rish rounds up her cleaning soon enough, and steps outside in her work outfit. She sees some maids picking on a newbie named Elsie, and she rushes to the rescue. The maids have no idea who she is, so they look down on her. They even dismiss her prediction of rainfall. They walk out on her, so she and Elsie get talking. They then rush indoors before the rain begins. Afterwards, she basks under the sunset, taking in the beauty of the last city on her list. Just then, she sensed Arnold's presence and called him out, much to his amusement. They then start talking about various places in the city, and as the prince points them out, they give our girl more and more joy. Arnold doesn't get it. In his mind, she's not supposed to be overjoyed by such mundane things, and definitely not in her situation. She then explains that she has always wanted to come to Galkine. She tells him what she finds beautiful about the place, and declares that she will be the one to decide what she holds dear. You see, her mother had tried to dim her light, but Babes fought against it, and Babes prevailed. Arnold then turns to face her, telling her that he gets it. His hand softly touches her cheek, and our girl doesn't remove it. Weak-willed simp. He tells her that whatever she plans to do, he'll support her, and then adds that he finds her immeasurable abilities to be amusing. She asks him why, and Arnold reiterates that he has fallen in love with her. As he leaves, he tells her to think of what she wants, since he broke her rule of not touching her. She staggers in his absence, thinking that homeboy must be plotting something. Rish is still in bed when Oliver comes knocking the next morning. She quickly changes out of her tasteless jammies and into some regal green dress. The aide then exchanges pleasantries with her at the door and announces how busy he and Arnold have been. Risha clocks that he's checking her out, so she tells him to take a good look. He quickly apologizes and praises her keen insight. No human resources here, just Arnold and his hungry blade. Of course he'll apologize. Her insecure ass uses the opportunity to ask if Oliver knows why the prince chose to marry her. He maneuvers his answer and just tells her that he hasn't seen Arnold this happy in ages. He then hands her a list of dignitaries that will be at their wedding and adds another list of attendees for a certain party. The next night, the maids are busy preparing everything as guests upon guests arrive at the palace. Rish makes some time to go see Arnold in his office, and he stops everything to attend to her. She asks for the chance to pick her own maids, and Arnold declares it a done deal. He then opens up about the dinner being an event where he's supposed to pick a wife from the Empire. Rish isn't the least bit offended. Instead, she gives Arnold her hand and announces that they can use this opportunity to present her to everyone as his wife. In turn, he takes her hand, and they later step into the crowd together. Upon arrival, noble men crowd the prince, some even bring their daughters to show him, but he introduces Risha as his betrothed right then and there. She could easily cope with the envy and jealousy, seeing as she has been broken up with before a crowd before. She then curtsies and gives the crowd her full name. Arnold only makes things clearer by referring to her as his future wife yet again. He proceeds to tell our girl that he'll protect her no matter what, and it's quite ironic because he's the one that killed her. She quips that he's probably the one most dangerous to her and segues into happily asking for a lesson in swordplay. This amuses Arnold some more, and they're interrupted by some lame music. They dance mostly because Rish wants to enjoy herself, and that's exactly what she does. As they sway to the music, she continually tries to lead, but somehow Arnold manages to put her in her place. A small smile crawls to his lips as the mind games continue. It almost seems like they're fighting elegantly without swords. As the music climaxes, Arnold dips Rish in a way that she fears she'll fall. Of course, he catches her right as the music stops and onlookers go wild. Later on, one of the jealous ladies presents our girl with a glass of wine. She smells it and instantly deduces that they crushed peppers into it. Either way, she calmly takes a sip and thanks the lady for her hospitality. This pisses her off, so she walks away. I would have put some of it in her eyes, though. Afterwards, Arnold joins her on the balcony as she's sipping what's left of the wine. She tells him that it's spicy, so he drinks it in her stead. Dumbfounded, she thanks him and overhears him bring up how she was thinking of someone else during their dance. She lies that it's because of his shoulder injury and actually guesses right. Arnold reveals a mighty scar showing that someone had tried to kill him over and over again. Too bad that the person failed. She tries touching it and even asking questions, but he escapes into the palace. The next morning, Rish joins the maids to do the laundry, and Diana, the head maid, comes screaming at Elsie to do better. She has no idea who Rish is, so she treats her like just another maid. After she leaves, Rish discovers that Diana's family used to be wealthy, but they lost everything. Dude should have invested in some Tesla stock. Later on, all the maids gather so that Rishi can pick her personal maids. Upon her arrival, Diana and all the others are shocked to see who it is. Our girl ends up picking Elsie and a bunch of other maids you probably don't give a damn about. Diana immediately bursts into complaints like a child who didn't get ice cream. Oliver tries to call her out, but Rishi was like, "Hold my beer." She then proceeds to fire Diana, and the maid comes dropping to the ground. Our girl reminds the maid of how incompetent she too was at the beginning of her career and points out that Diana can read and write, unlike the other maids. Rish made her see how it gave her an edge in her work, and this breaks Diana, making her burst into tears and apologize for mistreating the others. They rush to her side to defend her before Rishi and get surprised as she picks Diana up just to offer her another job. Apparently, our girl would like to train maids on how to work better and also teach them how to read and write. That's where Diana comes in. The maid is so grateful, mostly because she had talked down on Rish in the beginning. Oliver talks with the prince afterwards and expresses his amusement towards Rishi and what she might do for the empire. Arnold is quick to tell him that that's not why he brought his future wife to Galkine. Meanwhile, Diana is enjoying her new job and shows Rish the syllabus. Our girl concurs with it, and they get interrupted by Elsie. Apparently, the Aria Trading Company will soon arrive and she needs to get ready. Rish picks out her most valuable dress and gets Elsie to do her hair. She plans to give the company a chance to collaborate with Galkine and sees the forthcoming meeting as a battle in which she must kick butt. Soon enough, she and Tully sit opposite each other. Risha looks Tully up and down as he tries to present his case. All she can think about are the positions she wants to put him in. Well, not really. She kinda needs his help so she doesn't fall victim to the war again. She then announces that she wants him to procure all the wares for her wedding. Unfortunately, Tully doesn't have a rat's ass to sell, at least not one that's up to the Galkine royalties level. Soon enough, he turns down Rish's offer, much to her surprise. He then stands up to leave. She tries getting him to speak with her some more, but he claims that he and his team are in town for a few days. The next day, our girl picks up a hoe for her garden and digs up the small plot as Tully comes to her mind again. She regrets not getting him to choose her as a customer, mostly because she'll need his connections when he becomes a global sensation. Her guards interrupt her thoughts as they ask why she's gardening by herself. She explains that it's for medicinal herbs and returns to thinking about a man that's not her husband. She soon remembers that he'll be sightseeing and calls it quits with her gardening. That night, Tully arrives at the tavern where he left his men and meets all of them drunk. Somehow, Riche had outdrank them. They find some privacy to discuss, but Tully can read our girl's tactics like a book. She tries selling him the method with which she dyed her hair, but he wants to hear her better offer. They clink cups, and Tully tells her to be straight with him. You see, his intuition wants him to be her partner, but he needs to hear her plan to make them some money first. Unfortunately, Rish quips that she can't tell it to him. This baffles the merchant so much that he smiles. He confirms if she wants him to enter a contract without assurance that he'll make profit, and our girl affirms this. In her heart, she realizes that telling him about her plan to use his help against Arnold and his wars would ruin everything from the beginning. Tully is a big fan of intuition, so Riche pulls on her knowledge from her past life and offers to come up with a business plan that can turn a profit in Galkine. The merchant likes the sound of it, so he gives Rish a week to get back to him. They then finish up their drinks, and our girl gives him some medicine for his passed-out colleagues. She sneaks back into the palace and meets Arnold sitting in her room. He reiterates how suspicious he finds it that a small time trader would turn down the next queen. He then walks up to Rish and gets her back pressed against the wall. She can't bear to look into his eyes, and he points this out soon enough. It only makes her more shy and pushes her to apologize for sneaking out. She tries to explain that it's bad for Arnold's reputation, but he doesn't care about that. He then asks if she's hurt. After she denies this, he gives her some breathing space and declares that he'll follow her when next she heads into town. Our girl tries fighting him on this, but Arnold doesn't change his mind. He takes a seat soon enough and then asks about her meeting with Tully, who looks like a ran-through shaman. Rish is sneaky, so she changes the topic as she asks if Arnold is hungry. She gets to cooking, and after adding spices, opens up that she's actually a terrible cook. The prince tastes the meal and quips that it's good. They then eat until they empty the pot. She opens up about Tully and about the challenges involved in getting a plan by week's end. This only amuses the prince. I'm starting to think he enjoys the pain of others. There's a word for this, but it's not PG. He stands to leave and then asks if she knows his younger brother. When she replies in the negative, Arnold warns her not to give him the time of day. She later visits the library to do some research and begins to think about gardening and preparing for the wedding. She resolves that she won't get much rest this period. Meanwhile, Arnold talks to Oliver about how good our girl's soup tasted and gets surprised when he discovers that it's not common practice to add medicinal herbs to soup. The next day, Rish visits her garden with her guards and meets someone fast asleep on the plot. The youngster wakes up, dusts himself, and declares that he's Theodore, Arnold's younger brother. They exchange pleasantries, and he gets her to come close enough to tell her that he wants to save her. Theodore thinks she's being held hostage, and our girl confirms it with a smile. She then tells him that Arnold has been nice to her, and this throws Theodore off. They part ways, and Rishi asks her guards if they were ordered to keep her away from Theodore. They're too scared to answer, so she asks if the royal siblings are close. The guards also keep quiet, so she gives it a rest, and they continue walking. Soon enough, they happen upon Arnold arguing with a subordinate over the implementation of laws that profit the people and not the regional lords. He tells this man to know his place, and that's when he notices that Rish has been staring for a while. She shows her support, and he smiles. He then switches his speech and promises to send separate notices to the lords, explaining how they'll get higher revenue from his new implementation. The prince keeps disproving everything she thought about him in her former life. She returns to her chambers and finds a sealed letter. It states that Arnold wants to reveal a secret to her in the chapel. She heads towards the chapel by midnight and isn't the least bit surprised when she sees Theodore instead. He's quite impressed that Risha isn't surprised to see him. He goes straight into shit-talking his older brother and calls him a killer to Risha's face. When he sees that she's not surprised, he adds that Arnold killed his mother and that he will also kill her one day. This takes our girl aback, but she regains herself soon enough. She then declares that she knew the kind of person Arnold was and still chose to be his bride. Theodore hates that she's unfazed, so he tries to buttress his point, and at that moment, Arnold walks in. This catches him off guard, and he wonders aloud how the prince knew to come there. Mr. Killjoy reminds Theodore that he ordered him to stay away from his bride, so the youngster sarcastically apologizes. Rish tries to get Arnold to talk to the boy, but he doesn't hear her, so Theodore walks out on them. Afterwards, he reminds Rish that he had also warned her against his brother. She then hides under the umbrella of getting a letter from him. She had replied to the letter, and this was sign enough for Arnold to come to the chapel. Later on, she asks why people think he's cruel, and the prince says it's because it's true. Rish refuses to believe this, so he places his hand on her neck, telling her to debunk every thought of him being kind. This still doesn't work, and it makes him wonder how she's so strong-willed. He claims that her eyes hold so much resolve, and it seems like she can die for what she believes in. He then admits that he's usually scared to kill people like her. His admittance of fear strikes a nerve in Rish. She later confesses that she doesn't plan to run and only has the resolve to live as his wife. This melts Arnold's heart, so he pulls our girl in for a kiss. She's wide-eyed the whole time. Damn weirdo. Anyway, he tells her that she doesn't need resolve to be his wife. The next day, Rishi sits amidst her newly made nail polish. She touches her lips as flashes of Arnold kissing her come to her mind. Whilst she's struggling to make sense of things, Elsie steps in. The maid quickly notices the nail polish, and Rish admits that it's the idea she plans to pitch for Tully. She makes Elsie take a seat and then applies the nail polish for her. She soon discovers that the maid, alongside a majority of Galkine, have a deep-rooted poverty problem. Rishi then attempts to paint Elsie's nails in her favorite color. For some reason, this makes the maid so happy that she bursts into tears. All the maids end up helping our girl make more nail polish, and she notices the joy on their faces. This makes her think about things from a queen's point of view. She presents the idea to Tully, and he loves it. The only problem is that he plans to sell it as a high-end product to nobility. He senses that Riche has other plans, so he hears her out. She displays a policy that Arnold put into place concerning the minimum wage and points out that people without jobs can't access this. She then declares that she'll work with Tully on the condition that he hires, in large scale, people from the slums to work on the nail polish manufacturing. He spits on her idea. Well, not literally, but you get me. She then explains that these new employees will end up becoming the company's greatest customers. She quotes something he told her in her past life and gets Tully to see that they can create their own customers. He bursts out laughing, having been impressed by her underlying motivation. As the crown princess, Riche takes the responsibility of creating a better life for her people quite seriously. All seems to be going well until Tully announces that our girl is still too immature. He adds that he plans to wring her dry because of her fixation on his trading company. Sadly, Rishi has a backup plan that she hates. She presents the merchant with a document stating his sister's ailment. This shuts him up instantly. Only the mafia would pull a stunt like that. Keep in mind that no one knows what Rishi did in her fifth life. Our girl then explains that she's working on a cure and that if his sister takes it for a year, she'll make a recovery. Tully almost doesn't believe her until she reminds him of the hangover medicine she left for him and his men. This pushes things in her favor, but as Tully is about to remit all that he owns, she makes it clear that she's doing it for the people in the slums. She then bows her head and humbly asks that he works with her. In turn, Tully takes a knee and apologizes for his arrogance. He then declares that he will do everything as Rish has said it. She happily thanks him, and they part ways. Afterwards, she tries to head to her room but breaks down. She then sends for Elsie. The guard fills Oliver in on the situation, and they both head to the room to see that Rish isn't there. Meanwhile, Theodore arrives in the slums, where he thanks Elsie and Camille for helping him abduct our girl. It really be your own people, folks. Theodore appears before a wary Risha with a smug smile across his lips. He announces that Elsie betrayed her and then admits that he kidnapped our girl just to make Arnold angry. He's childish, I know. After confessing that his brother only looks at him when he's mad, the youngster doesn't like how that sounds, so he exits the room to go talk to his brother. You see, when Risha almost collapsed, Elsie and Camille had come running. They apologized and promised not to let anything happen to her. She used this as a clue and deciphered that Theodore had sent them to do something. They admitted that they were to imprison her, and Riche wholeheartedly escorted them, thus shocking both of them. Back to the present, Theodore comes before Arnold to brag about taking his wife prisoner. He then asks his brother to denounce his claim to the throne if he wants to come back unhurt. Arnold just laughs as he confirms the conditions around his wife's imprisonment. Theodore describes them with all naivete, and it amuses the prince some more. He then makes it clear that nothing the youngster listed is enough to hold Rish down. Right on cue, she bursts through the door and announces that she and Theodore have unfinished business. The youngster is so shocked that he stutters as he asks how she did it. Rishi doesn't hold back, she lists all the things one must do before claiming that he has imprisoned someone, and the last one is to break the hands and legs of your prisoner and then surround them with guards. Things get so dark that Arnold has to stop her before she stumps on Theodore. He covers her with his jacket, and our girl's tone switches from angry bird to baby dove. She becomes worried that his neck scar will be exposed. Funny thing is that Theodore doesn't even know about the scar. Dude has been shut out of his bro's life for ages. Rishi turns around and asks what Theodore aims to get out of the ruckus. He boldly declares that he wants to be next in line to get the throne, but our girl blatantly disagrees. She thrashes his opinion and reveals that he's doing everything for the sake of his brother. The thought of Rishi implying that he's doing good for others irks him so much that he yells that she is wrong. He then declares that he wants his brother to hate him. Rishi is about to engage him some more when Arnold halts everything. He makes it clear that he doesn't care about his brother or his opinions, and the youngster leaves to go weep in a corner like a real man. Rish continues playing peacemaker, but Arnold is insistent that he doesn't care about Theodore. She disputes this and points out that he plans to run away from his royal duties in the future and that Theodore knows this. That's why the boy is trying to be the villain in place of Arnold. She awaits the prince's opinion, but he quips that it's good that Rish doesn't understand his decisions and adds that Theodore doesn't need him in his life. His wife asks if he has ever considered a life where he and his brother don't disappear. She then suggests that he lives a life that he won't regret and declares that she will also live as his wife without regret. She excuses herself in an attempt to chase after Theodore, but she gets tired while climbing the stairs, so she takes a little break. The youngster sits on the roof as he remembers a time when bandits attacked a medical tent. He stood to protect his vassal and almost lost his life. Luckily, Arnold arrived at that moment and struck down the bandits. He then commended Theodore for protecting his vassal. Back to the present, and Rishi finally joins Theodore on the rooftop. They talk about Arnold making himself infamous so he can disappear at any time. The youngster plans to disappear before his brother can, just so that the kingdom will not miss out on such a good leader. Rishi uses this window to ask for his help in stopping Arnold from doing something rash. Theodore quips that her request makes him happy, but he decides that taking his life will be best for his brother. He jumps off the roof, and all of Rish's efforts to get to him fail when she falls to the ground. As Theodore slips away, Arnold pops up to save him. He then gives him a slap so resounding that Theodore could probably see with his tongue. He later scolds him for trying to help out, and Rish pokes her nose in the conversation by giving Theodore the ammo he needs to defend himself. Afterwards, Arnold reminds him of the time he ordered him not to put his life in danger. This pushes the youngster to tears, and Rish smiles, having accomplished her mission. Arnold kneels beside her to talk, but she passes out soon enough. He realizes that she's just sleeping and carries her as he leaves Theodore to arrange a carriage. She awakes to see Arnold in her room the next morning. She immediately apologizes for stressing him, but all he cares about is whether or not she's fine. After she confirms her well-being, he presents a letter from Theodore. In it, the youngster thanks her for everything and offers his cooperation if she wants to use his people in the slums. Afterwards, Arnold tells her to pick something as payment for him touching her. She remembers the kiss and instantly falls shy. She even wraps herself in her bed linen, screaming that she doesn't want anything. Arnold then thanks her for looking after his brother, and she reiterates that he'll be her brother too.